Hi, everybody. Good morning. Just bringing to you today a couple of earnings picks from Wednesday, February 2nd. We had some stocks reporting earnings last night and this morning, and just wanted to go over a couple of them for potential plays that have decent setups. So, first here we have Electronic Arts. Electronic Arts is a game making company with the rise of Fortnite and other such uh, games that involve multiplayer or even single player shooter mode, EA has kind of struggled in the past actually couple of years. So if you look at the daily chart on it, it's been in a downtrend for a while since last year. Um, Going to the weekly, actually, you can see it had a pretty good run up until last summer, and then has just been declining ever since. So we've had a few gap downs on earnings. You can see here this was an earnings gap down, and it made an island gap down again, and it's just been kind of trending down. It did start to, kind of uh, recover a little bit and consolidate here prior to earnings yesterday night. But you can see on the 5-minute chart here that it has kind of had a huge move to the downside on earnings. It closed yesterday at 92.52, and the low of the overnight session was 74.71. So quite a bit of a move. Um, as you can see from the trend lines drawn down at the bottom, and I'll show you on the daily as well, you've got two kind of intersecting lines. This 74.19 area it's actually a 73.91, but I usually tag it to uh, this uh, um, this bar here to kind of get both bars. So it's around $74, the pivot right there. And then there's also a longer term trend line. If you take a look at the weekly chart, you can see this trend line here, this red line, which goes all the way back to early last year, utilizing the low of that time frame, and then the low of December of the Christmas Eve low. So that trend line is intersecting with this other trend line, or rather pivot from last year in a pretty interesting way. So if you take a look at the 5 minute, it did almost hit those lines in the overnight. So what I'll be looking for this morning is a either a retrace down to those lines with a bounce, or it may not even make it down there, and it may just start recovering. So I expect at the open I'll be waiting to see if it gets down to this line, and if it does and has a bounce, I'll look to buy the stock over that first um, bar, probably 1 or 2 minute bar, likely maybe 5 minute, depending on how the stock's acting, how volatile it is. I'll wait for the second green bar to buy a piece of this stock. So what my targets are, what you can do when a stock has moved this far is throw kind of a Fibonacci retracement on it. So if you take a look at the close of yesterday, or the high in the overnight, and the low in the overnight, down to that 74, 71 level, you can see the 50% retracement is right here at this 83, um, 61 area. So that's kind of my first target. Obviously, you have these other moving averages as well on the 5 minute chart. You have the 50 and 200 moving average on the 5 minute chart as well that you can keep an eye on for if for uh, for resistance. But I would be targeting this first piece to be sold right here at 84 if I get it around 84 if I get into the stock. If it blows through that for some reason, you've got a 61.8 retracement you can utilize as well. I don't expect that it's going to, if it, coming down all the way down here, I don't expect it to be going back up. But if for some reason it it happens to get really strong and goes above this consolidation here, I would say your next point of resistance would be this red trend line, which is a very long-term trend line from 2015, I believe, 2013. Sorry. Um, so that's kind of EA in a nutshell. It looks like it's going to be giving us a pretty good trading opportunity if it continues to show weakness in the morning and support around the 74 area. Additionally to EA, there was Snap. So you have Snapchat showing some pretty good strength today. This stock, has been again on a it's just been performing very poorly. You can see after its IPO, it's just kind of performed very poorly, going from 29.44 down to 482 at the low earlier, like late last year in December. So it was kind of, making somewhat of a bottom right here. You can see this area that looks like a little cup, and it's actually managed to pop quite a bit above that in the overnight. So this 200-day moving average is right around 921. So if you take a look at, and then you have this trend line, of course, which is much higher than the 200-day. But we have a couple of pivots on the chart as well that we can utilize as potential targets or resistance levels. So going back down to the 5-minute chart, you see here at 921, which is that 200-day moving average that I just mentioned, is not very far from where we are right now. So that could act as a level of resistance as well. The 908 pivot is also could act as a level of resistance. You can see here the stock did pop really hard and has been just kind of consolidating in a full flag all night and into this morning. So what I'd be looking for, let's move to the 4-hour chart here. You can see here pretty good cup or base, and then popping over the basing area in the overnight. So it should gap up into this area right here. So I would expect some resistance around the 200-day moving average or that a 908 area pivot. Um, that'll be what I look for first. So if it pops right through that area, the 200-day, then we can, probably won't take a trade on it. But what I'm planning on doing, if it shows some resistance in this 908 to 921 area, if it goes back up, I mean it's already kind of gotten to 890 and is moving downwards. But if it gets back up and shows some resistance, I plan on shorting the stock. Um, and it could gap fill. It could do a 50% retracement of the move it's made in the overnight. So we can put that on here just as a reference. Um, these will be my targets. Obviously, on the 5-minute chart, you have the 200 moving average, which could also be a level of support there, rather, and then this 50% fib. So if it continues to go down, I mean, it could just go straight down off the open, and that would also be a potential short, in my opinion, anyway. I might take that short if it shows weakness right off the open for a quick trade from about 850 or so down to either the $8 level, which is obviously a round number, as well as this 200 moving average, or this 50% retracement at around 787. So depending on how it acts right off the open, you could take a quick trade just for an immediate short for a short term play. If it goes up, be looking for those other two resistance areas that we talked about. Um, Also, Disney reported earnings in the overnight as well. So you can see it moved really hard to the upside, all the way up to 115.24. It closed at 112.66, so a little bit more than the market maker move suggested, but it did come right back down, all the way down to the 112 area, and it's been showing a little strength in this morning. In the conference call, there was some discussion about some, even though it beat on earnings and revenue, they had some problems with their streaming services or the user, the activity and things like that. So there is a little bit of weakness off of that first rip. But what we'll be looking for in Disney, if you take a look at the daily chart, it was showing I mean, it is showing a pretty good strength here. You have, V bottom off of the December lows, and then it has been kind of consolidating here in kind of a exaggerated cup and handle type pattern with a breakout right around this area, the 112 area, actually 111, 112 area. So this yesterday was actually a pretty good breakout day. You can see the high volume and the green bar over this consolidation area. Um, what I'm looking for is a break of this um, 113 area right here where both of these highs are. So right about, yeah, 113. I mean, you could utilize this pivot here, 113.24, as your, you know, entry point if you'd like, because that one little spike. But I mean, really, just if it opens up, I mean, today at all, uh, it's a good long play up till this this pivot area here, this area of consolidation and pivot around 114. I anticipate it'll probably go through that, and then you have this pivot here, which is in the middle of this consolidation range, and then of course the high 120.20, the short-term high, and then you can go from there. But for the short term, like for a day trade, I mean that would be more of a swing trade, a longer term hold. But for a day trade, I would say since it's already going up, it's already past the 113.90 kind of pivot. If it stays above this, you could trade it to the high in the overnight for a trade, and then your next you have some pivots here, 116 area, um, and then, obviously, I think the 120 is a little too high to be thinking about. But it's not really the best setup, but because it is already moving up off of this, uh, uh, you know, this area here, it's already moving up a little bit. If it continues to the upside, it could be a potential play just, right to that 114.90, 115 area. That's just about a dollar from where it is right now. Um, but again, not the best setup. I anticipated it to be opening kind of down here still, but it's been showing some strength this morning. So we'll keep an eye on Disney. May not be the best trade, but just worth looking at anyway. And then there's Take Two, which is also another gaming stock like EA, which we talked about earlier. It also has been very weak. And been in this consolidation range for a while, since November of last year. So it is also showing some weakness. I believe it is down in, let's see, yeah, it went all the way down to this 92, below this 92.51 pivot in the overnight, and is kind of up here in this 96 area right now. So if you take a look at Take Two on the weekly chart, you can see it has this pivot here, which is 92.81 actually. Um, and if it could manage to stay above that, it could afford some retracement back into this consolidation area. If it breaks this 92.51 level, I mean you have a pretty wide area to the downside that you could get to. You got this pivot right here, of course, this 80.67 pivot, and then you have this 70.55 pivot. So really about $10 in between, each area to kind of, take a look at as a potential trade. So you have kind of a topping pattern here if it gets below the 92.51 area. So we're taking a look at, on the daily side, uh, rather the intraday. Let's take a look at the 5-minute chart. It went all the way down to 91.20. It stopped. It came back up, stopped around 100, which is 99.74. This pivot here, and is making its way back down. So, what I would say in this case, since it's already done kind of a 50% retracement of the down move in the overnight session, I would watch to see if it goes if it shows weakness right off the gate, like right off the open. I would look for a retracement back down to this 92.81 area, which is that pivot, and look for a break of that area. And then you could use this 91.20, which is the overnight low, as your first target. And if it gets below that, then we talked about some of the other levels down to 80, etc. And you can just trail your stops, obviously, as you're going along if there's no clear support levels before that 80. Um, so take two is actually pretty decent for a short trade if it continues to go down and show some weakness. I would say if it starts to show some strength and gets back above that 99.74 level, I mean, it could just fill the gap back up into this consolidation range because it has been just kind of sitting here. So you could have a situation where it pops down and it's going to be looking to kind of fill the gap between yesterday and where it opens today. So if you take a look back at the 5-minute chart, it's going to be gapping down into this area here, right? So if it starts to kind of meander its way up, if it gets above this 99.74 pivot right here in the overnight, you could see some gap filling, at least up to this area here where it opened at after earnings, which is 103.56. And then it could potentially get all the way back up to the close of 107.29 or thereabouts. So I would use this 99. I mean, you have two potential trades here. My inclination is more on the short side. I'm just not a big fan of the gaming stocks. I think they've been performing quite poorly, because of Fortnite's success and that particular company not being public. So I anticipate my trade on this, if I take one, if it stays in this area in the next 20 minutes before the open and starts kind of breaking down, I will take a trade to the downside after the first bar, like the low of the first bar. And I'll trade on the 1 minute, obviously, off the open. So 1 minute bar, if it crosses down below that, I'll make a short trade using this area as my first target. Obviously, if it breaks down below that, we'll look at 91.20 for support, and then we have pivot in the 80 level at the 80 level to look for. If it shows some strength here at this pivot, at the 96.04 pivot, if it shows some support and starts bouncing, obviously we'll get out of the trade and look for a potential long entry if it gets back above 99.74 as a gap fill play. So it looks kind of weak though. So I think Take Two and EA are both um, really weak. So because EA has not recovered like Take Two has, that's why I'm looking for it to continue to go down and potentially bounce. Um, Take Two has shown a little bit more strength here, so it gives us actually an opportunity to short it right off the open. So those are the earnings trades for today. Just kind of overall the condition of the market. Let's look at the ES futures, or we'll look at SPX. How about that? We'll look at SPX on the daily just to give an idea of where we are in the market overall. You can see here the weakness that was evident in the December time frame. Obviously, it's been weak since October of last year, but it consolidated, then dropped really hard in December, culminating with the uh, Christmas Eve low, and it has just been straight up ever since almost. So just a huge V bottom. It's already into this consolidation range here. So, either it could either come right back up, into this area. I mean, it has this whole area. It could just kind of, now that it's back into the consolidation range, it could just kind of continue to be volatile in this range and consolidate. Um, so really nothing from a trend perspective. Obviously, it's very bullish right this second, but it's coming up on a consolidation range where until it gets out, up and out or back down below this consolidation range right here, it's definitely, kind of still in a limbo type of situation. Like this is, here, this range, this consolidation range is what I'm referring to here. So we still have a lot of chop in this area, and now that it's moved its way, into this area above this particular pivot here from the November low or October low rather, You know, it went straight above that and is just kind of now into this consolidation range until it can get up above it or down below it. There's no real um, trend, I guess, at the moment. It's just a lot of volatility, maybe data dependent um, market right now. Moving on, news and China trade tariffs news, as well as also the Fed and its decisions on interest rates. So we're just kind of, this is a stock pickers market. We're looking at individual stocks right now instead of trying to, make a prediction on how the market itself is going to move. So until such time as it changes into a clear pattern or direction based on coming out of a consolidation or, into a more bearish tone, coming back down out of it, we're going to just stick with probably earnings in this season and then, just take a look at stocks, individual stocks. I did want to just point out in general, just so you guys can keep an eye out for um, the marijuana stocks. There's a lot of excuse me, cannabis stock strength this week. Actually, since December, this is kind of an ETF on those stocks. You can see a lot of strength here since December. And just to kind of go through a couple of those stocks that I've been looking at and trading in and out of, Kronos, huge move after the December, actually broke out in January here in this area right here. Um, and you've got a huge move all the way up to 25 even day before yesterday. So there's an opportunity for potentially a pullback and continuation there. It has moved quite a bit though. You also have Tilray. Um, the stock is very volatile. It has been kind of consolidating. Hasn't moved as much as its counterparts, I guess. I do have an option on this trade. You can see here an option on this stock, rather in the low 70s. So I'm doing okay. We're looking to get out of that position. Probably at this trend line, um, this downtrend line actually. So Tilray hasn't showed as much strength as Kronos has, but it is kind of a double bottom or a basing pattern here. So we're looking for it to continue up. Our stop for this position is below the 70 low. We also have Canopy Growth. You can see here this has also had a very strong move to the upside in kind of a channel, not really, but at least um, depending on the move that it makes right here, if it goes up and kind of stops here or stops right here and comes back down, it is kind of a channeling stock over the course of the past several months. So we'll be looking for pivot points to trade there. And you also have some of the smaller stocks like ACB, Aurora Cannabis, looking like coming out of a cup and handle move or a base move right here. It did kind of break out and then fail a little bit, but if you utilize this as a breakout point, it's still pretty good. So looking for a trade in ACB as well to the upside. Of course, it has earnings coming up also. So there's several, just a couple. There's quite a few more. You have APHA as well. Also, huge moves, um, gap fill, and then 3 days of just really extreme moves. So cannabis stocks are actually getting hot, so it's worth looking at going forward. But other than that, just keep an eye on the stocks that you're trading. I wouldn't so much try to trade the market as a whole right now, but um, just play earnings for what they are. It's a great opportunity to make some good trades off of earnings with the binary events and the momentum. So other than that, have a great rest of your Wednesday, and we will come back with some other picks later in the week. Thank you.